All right, hello everyone. So I will be going live with Divya Kakkar on the topic of self-validation today. So let me just invite her. See if I can do it. There we go. There we go. Perfect. Should be going live with Divya here in a second.
Hi Anvi, how are you?
Good. How are you? How are you? Okay, great.
I am good too. Thank you. Thank
This
you.
this interface I think is new to me, so I was like I'm like struggling over here.
Okay.
There we go. If it stays. Okay, cool. Awesome. So, how are you today?
I am good. Thank you. Thanks for inviting and having me here. So good to be interacting with you. Thank you.
Yes, I'm so excited we were finally able to do this because I know it took a few reschedulings due to life happening.
Yes, yes, but finally it is happening.
Yes, I'm actually super excited about this topic of self-validation because so before we jump into a topic, do you want to introduce yourself briefly for our listeners?
Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
can you give
So,
me 1 second?
sure. Hello, everybody. Hi, Akshita. Hi, Christine. Hi, Siddharth. Hi, Ankur.
Apologies. Okay. Sorry, I'm at home, so they were just wanted to quiet down the
Okay,
background noise.
okay.
Okay,
And
cool.
how are things there? I heard it's too extreme there. How is it now?
They're good. They're good. We had a snowstorm by Texas standards
Yeah,
a few
yeah.
of 2 weeks ago now, so it's been a little while. But now it's just sunny. Like for the last 2 weeks, it's been perfectly sunny and good. So,
Right.
you know, I was like, I'm never complaining about Texas weather ever again. Sometimes I'm like, it's too hot, it's too hot. I'm like, no, this is perfect. Just stay hot weather, stay. We're not built for cold weather at all. We're only built for hot weather.
Yeah,
So,
we're grateful.
yeah, no, it's all good.
Yeah.
How
Great,
about
great.
how
Good to
about
hear
you?
about that.
How's everything up there?
Yeah, it's good. It's actually very pleasant here. So it was too cold some few weeks back, but right now it's just so pleasant. It's amazing.
Nice. Okay, good. No, good to hear. So we're good. We're all good in pleasant weather, right? Awesome.
Yes.
So, did you get a chance to introduce yourself? Sorry, while I had to take a quick breather.
Yeah, I was just greeting people who joined in. I did not introduce myself yet. So my name is Divya Kakkar. For those of you who have not met me before this, I'm a mindset coach and I help my clients get to the subconscious root cause of their life problems.
That's awesome.
This is
No,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I never heard of that before you told me that's what you did. I was like, I've heard of similar
Okay.
things, but like specifically like a freedom mindset coach, I never heard of that. So
Hmm.
that was very fascinating. I was like, what is that?
Right. So
Awesome.
we are using principles of neuro-linguistic programming and hypnotherapy plus emotional freedom techniques also. So a blend of all of these to get there. Yeah.
Gotcha. That's super cool. I've definitely heard of neuro linguistic programming before. I think it's very
Yeah.
interesting, and I want to learn more about it. But before I dive in, so for those of you who don't know me, I'm Anvita. I co-host this women's empowerment series on Talking Wellbeing. I know it's been a while since we've gone live, but I'm super excited to have Divya with me. I know, Divya, you've talked to like James before, who's Talking Wellbeing.
Yes.
So we've definitely, collaborated before. So it's just great to continue that partnership. And we're going to be talking about the topic of self-validation, which I think is super important because, and I think it's super timely in the month, near the month of February, actually, because February is self-love month for those of you who might not know. And I think self-validation is a really important topic. It's a very important facet of self-love. So you talked about like the subconscious mind, which I think plays like a huge part in self-validation. So
Right.
before I jumped into like how do you build self-validation, I want to kind of talk about the opposite of that in terms of like external validation. I think a lot of us seek external validation in our lives on a daily basis. It's kind of a natural human
Exactly.
tendency. So how would you advise, how do you build awareness of when you're seeking external validation?
Right, right. So Anvi, I would say that, most of us, before we have this self-awareness, we were mostly seeking external validation because we've been
Mm-hmm.
taught to. So even as children, we're taught to ask our mothers how we are looking, or maybe our fathers how we are speaking, and but as very small kids, when we are very small, we are not seeking validation, and we are so
Yeah.
happy in ourselves, and we are just so confident. No kid would ask if I'm crying in the right way, if I'm eating in the right manner or not. But we've been taught by the society, and we are learning from our peer group, maybe from our parents, from our adults, that it's really important to ask other people about how you are looking, how you are behaving, how your attitudes are, and maybe even your approach to life overall. So we've been taught by people outside, and we've seen others doing it, so we've also started doing it. So we are always seeking external validation.
Yeah.
So that begins at a very early age, and since our subconscious mind is really open at that point in time, we just pick up those patterns, and we just think that it is the way to life, and it is natural. We think it that way. So we just keep picking on those habits until we realize at a point that something is off, or something is wrong. We are not doing something right. So at that point, we realize that it's been too much, and we kind of start feeling a dissonance inside ourselves. That's when we feel the need to stop seeking validation from outside, I think.
I think you bring up an interesting point about, as children, we don't naturally seek that. That's something that's often taught, and it's socially conditioned. A lot of it is social conditioning, is that, oh, you should be seeking external validation. Like, log kya kehte hain, right? Is so common in South Asian culture for those who speak English. Like, what do people think? You like externally, there's like, you build an impression on people through your actions, and that's an impression you should care about, and that information should inform your decision making, right? That's what you're talking about. So in what situations, and how have you kind of built your personal awareness of when you might have been seeking self-validation, and how have you worked on reprogramming that? Or how do you advise your clients on how to reprogram something like a subconscious mind, which is so powerful, but often I don't think we realize when we're programming our subconscious mind in certain ways.
Right. So, Anvi, for me, it happened, I would say in teenage itself. I started feeling the need, I started feeling disconnected with people's opinion, because they are judging, because there were people in my, if I remember it correctly, in my school, in my class, so there was an obese girl, all right. So she used to feel so less on confidence, and when I would go and sit by her side, she would always be like, nobody talks to me, why are you talking with me? There was a girl who was dusky in complexion, and very dark actually, so she would also feel the same way. And even me, I had short hair, and nobody would talk to me at one point, and I was bullied. So there was a lot of questions in my mind, and I would be saying that, why is it, when because of external appearance, people are not accepting you for the person that you are within. Maybe they don't even know you. They don't know what goes in your heart, and what are your intentions, and what are you trying to do for the society, maybe. But only what they can see is your external shell, or maybe the clothing that you're wearing, and that's it. They don't even want to go to the deeper aspects of yourself. So that was the point when I started questioning these beliefs of society, and even my parents, for that matter, that why is it that only fair girls are taken as beautiful, or maybe there are standards of beauty that have been set. We need to just go to salons even if we don't want to. But then later on I realized that I didn't have to. So it was upon me. So if I am confident enough that I can carry my body hair confidently, it's up to me if I go to salon for removing those hair or not.
Right.
So it's yeah. So that's when I started questioning, and that's when internal validation as a concept was introduced to me, that
Yeah.
I didn't have to truly rely on those standards that have already been set by others.
Gotcha. It's interesting that you said that I think a lot of us have this experience where we have to come into learning internal validation as a concept. Like the fact that that exists,
Right.
and that's actually something we did when we were children, when we were babies. That was
Right.
where
Exactly.
we didn't
Exactly.
seek external validation. And the only
Right.
concept of validation we probably have that's external is our parents. I think as
Right.
children, like as babies, those are the people that we look up to for
Exactly.
unconditional love. But beyond that, we haven't really looked past that for external validation. So I think that whole
True.
concept of like questioning those standards is super important. And I think
Exactly.
people do that different, like something triggers it. And sadly,
Right.
instances of bullying, like I know I felt really out of place when I was a kid, as I was really shy. I was almost like super shy. At least I felt like I was super shy, and I felt like I knew I had a voice, but I didn't feel comfortable expressing it. And for me, that was kind of the trigger. I actually, like when I was 16, I joined the newspaper team, and I found my voice through writing. And I think that was when I started questioning, like, okay, why do I not feel comfortable expressing my voice? What's conditioning me to do that? And I think that's the key, is having these experiences, as much as they aren't great to go through in the moment, they help us break that down. Now, what, my question off of that is, how have you, so once you kind of grasp the concept of internal validation or self-validation, how did you go on building it? Like, what are some key practices you put into place, which you built it yourself, and then you got to the point where you're a freedom mindset coach and you're helping other people build it?
Right. So, Anvi, for me, even for me, like you shared, writing was one aspect where from it started for me also. I started putting in my thoughts, pouring in everything that I was holding on to on paper. And then it felt kind of there was a whole lot of relief, which I used to feel deep inside. And I used to feel that, okay, I didn't have to share it with others. This is just for me. I'm writing my own journal, and maybe I'm weird. So, as a child, I used to believe because I'm different, I'm weird, because I don't actually subscribe to their ideas. Because everybody around me was subscribing to those same ideas of beauty, of fitness, of everything, of being a perfect kid, or every single thing. And I felt that because I have different thoughts, maybe I'm weird, and I'm not normal. So I used to just share it with myself, and later on I came across people who used to think like me, and that is when it started building even further. So in college I came across some few people who used to think like me, and I was like, okay, there was this friend of mine who was a gay. All right, so he was so kind and so compassionate, and he was so fun to be around, and he would not open up with anybody because one, he felt embarrassed himself of being the way that he was. He would not accept himself because, one, there is not a lot of awareness here, maybe in the city that we were in, and second, he also was scared of other people. What would others say? How would others judge him? So when I came across such people, we all related with each other in the sense that you don't need external validation. You are good the way you are. And when you think about it in terms of beyond just identity, when you think of it in the sense of maybe in a larger picture, when you see what good are you doing for the society as a whole, what is it that you're contributing to the society, then you can see or look at yourself beyond the person that you are or the personality that you are. Right? Then you don't think in terms of gender, you don't think in terms of maybe your physical appearance or your background, what is your caste and everything else, and then you stop thinking from a very narrow mindset, which is just seeking external validation. Then you start looking at the bigger picture. And also, I would say spirituality played a very important role when it comes to leaving this need of seeking external validation. It began with when my spiritual journey began. I started going inside myself, That was the point when I realized that I did not have to ask anybody if I am beautiful or not, if I am, presentable or not, if I am talking to people the right way or not, because I realized spiritual texts helped me a lot. When I read that Osho, the Rajneesh, and Gautama the Siddhartha. So all of these people, maybe Sri Ramana Maharshi or Nisargadatta Maharaj, all of these spiritual leaders, they were very, very different. They left their family in early childhood. They went, some of them went to the Himalayas and, like that. So their stories have been like that. So I would always question how were they so courageous that they were able to leave even their families for this inner sense of peace, they were having this sense of purpose maybe. So they were driven towards that. So, where did this come from? And then I started chasing this inner voice. That's when I stopped asking others if what I was doing was right or not. And that is when it started building for me. So Anvi, I would say these 2 or 3 things, spiritual practices, and continuously reminding myself that I am enough. And not a lot of people already have that idea. So maybe I'm different, but it's okay to be different. And then hanging out with people, like-minded people. So these were a few things that really helped me build the sense of not seeking external validation.
Awesome. Now that portion that you bring up about spirituality really speaks to me, because I'm actually going through my own journey right now a little bit with just like really being committed to that sense of inner peace and being able to filter out things that do not align with that sense of inner peace, even though it's really like foreign to me. Like sometimes I'm like, I feel disconnected. Like I feel like I should care about, but it doesn't give me inner peace. So like, because it's a very different way of operating. I feel like you have to really unpack social conditioning that you've learned, and you have to unlearn behaviors, which makes it really hard. I think sometimes it's really weird to wrap your head around. So I think it's really cool that you were able to do that, and really resonate with the spiritual journeys of people who acted very differently than society would typically expect people to act. And I think that's really it's like a role modeling thing, right? You saw these journeys and you're like, oh, now it kind of gives you permission. You give yourself permission. I think that statement, the affirmation, I would advise everyone to use that affirmation, I am enough, because I think it's so important to tell yourself that, because then you go from getting other people's permission to your own permission. And then your own permission becomes enough, is what I think is the concept you're talking about. So I think another aspect of that I've been exploring with self-validation is the whole idea of like, what are my needs, and acknowledging my own needs. And I think, you and I, when we talked about how that's a very important concept of being honest with yourself about your own needs. So what is your advice for like how to do that? Because I know it's a very difficult thing for people to even be aware of their own needs.
Exactly. Right. So Anvi, as we are talking, this reminds me of a book that I read a few years back. It's called Veronica Decides to Die by Paulo Coelho. So this was one of the reads that actually transformed something inside me, which I wasn't even aware of. This talks about listening to your own body. So this girl Veronica, there's a story of a girl who's trying to commit suicide, and then she doesn't, and then she's admitted into a mental asylum, and that is the point where she realizes that people who are treated as not normal are the ones who are normal. So she hangs out with these people and she feels that sense of happiness and she feels that sense of fulfillment while staying in that mental asylum. She says that I have not been happier than this outside ever, because because I've been faking myself, faking my emotions, faking my needs and faking my feelings all the time. So right now I can be so free with these people because these are the people who will not judge. Right. So
gotcha.
for us, it's really important for all of us to identify what we truly need without thinking what others would think. You know, again, the thing that you said, log kya kahenge, is a very, very,
Oh my gosh.
so in India, it's actually very common. In Asian countries, you would say it's really common. And it's really important for us to realize that you have to rise above it. Maybe people who believe in a past life or something like that, if not in this life, maybe in the next life, you will have to learn it. So it's really important. Maybe if you realize it right now, it would be better. All of us need to actually realize this, that we need to acknowledge our own needs, our own feelings. We need to stop lying to ourselves first. And me, I would say that for a very, very long time, I was lying to myself. See, I was in I would say I was in my own cocoon, and I was in my own shell, where I had created a lot of beliefs about how life should be. Life should be, because I was conditioned in that manner. I believe that love has to be all about sacrifices. Okay. So I was sacrificing for 7 long years in a relationship. I was not really happy, but also not wanting to come out of it, because I was thinking that loyalty is more important, but not realizing that being happy is also important. So we're not taught all of that.
No, never.
We've not been taught in schools. We've not been told by our parents that you should be happy. You should realize and acknowledge your own needs. So one thing I would say is assess how you're feeling in day-to-day life, and then take a call. If you're not happy, there must be something that you're not acknowledging. At the back end, there must be something which is wrong going on. It could be because of how you are treated by others, or it could be because of you yourself, right? So it's really important to actually do a self-check about feelings, about thoughts, and your general being, how you are. And that is when you'll realize that maybe something is off, something is wrong, and you're not acknowledging what you should be.
I think that is such a good concept of that you bring up about acknowledging starting with your feelings, because I think a lot of times we use more rational, and I think this is another thing that's socially conditioned, is we use a lot of rational or logic as the source of information, or our primary source of information, because that's been conditioned in us again. But emotions are also a source of information. It's just about how you respond to those emotions rather than reacting to emotions. I think the concept you're talking about is using it as a source of information. And it's wild how much our emotions can reveal about our needs. I think I want to use an example.
Emotional intelligence again.
Yes, emotional, because you're not taught that at school. I mean, for me, a lot of it I learned a lot later in my life, when I had to. I was in situations where I need to know how to deal with my emotions, and I haven't learned it, so I have to teach myself. Or I have to go find books or something. I have to find a source of information that talks about this, so that I can, for me, it was a lot of mental illness, and I know that, plays in, I'm sure, into your work. But for me, I had to learn a lot of emotional response and regulation to manage mentally. So I feel like my therapist was one of the first people who taught me things like that. Like, how do you deal with emotions and stuff like that, and acknowledging needs. But it shouldn't take that long to learn it, and I think that's what you're talking about. We're not taught it. So
right. So a lot of people only rely on their minds, and only on the signals that are produced from there. But we don't realize that there are different pathways also, other than the mind. So there are different pathways, which is gut. There are neurons even there. Even in our gut, there are neurons, and actual intelligence is there. So we can trust our gut feeling. So it's for this reason that why people say that you should trust your gut feeling, is because neurons are there. It's not the same pathway than the mind, but it's still intelligence of some kind, and emotional intelligence. So we should be trusting our gut. We should trust our heart.
I think gut health, right, is super important, and that's definitely something I have so much room for improvement on, right, in terms of eating. But the other thing, so how do you think, because this is just a curiosity question, like I know we're talking about self-validation, but how do you think that how do you go about kind of taking responsibility for your needs, right? So once you acknowledge them, I think there's a level of like taking ownership and responsibility for fulfilling your needs in order to get to the point
Exactly.
of where you're validating yourself. So what are your tips for actually, once you acknowledge them, how do you go about kind of taking responsibility for those needs?
Okay. So this again reminds me of a quote that I read on Instagram itself. It said, if you are not where you wanted to be, then you can't blame your parents, your spouse, your kids for that. It's your responsibility solely for taking yourself to where you want to go. So maybe something has happened in the past and you would say that I did it for you, I did it for my children, I did it for somebody else, but then you can't blame them, right? It's your responsibility only to be where you want to be, right? And again, talking about the steps or taking responsibility of your own needs, again, it would come once you acknowledge that meeting those needs is important. Again, in our conditioning, we've been taught that listening to your own self is being selfish. But we need to realize that it's not being selfish. It's about self-love. Right. So you need to acknowledge and also accept that it's your responsibility, and you must.
It's essential.
Just like everybody else. Yes.
It's essential. To your health. I think that's the way I like to say it. It's like eating healthy and exercising, self-love, and those can be acts of self-love as well. But self-love and taking care of yourself is super important, because if you are just spending your time taking care of other people without taking care of yourself, you don't have any energy to give to other people. You're basically like pouring from an empty cup kind of analogy. I think is so pertinent here. Is like you have to pour into the cup first. So true. So I think you can do both. I think sometimes if we come from like a scarcity mindset, I think a lot of these beliefs come from a scarcity mindset. Is
true.
We feel like we cannot make room for both. We can't make room for our needs and others needs to exist at the same time. We can't take care of them at the same time. Right. I think that's the fundamental issue.
Exactly.
Which drives that, like, if I'm making room for my needs, then I'm taking away from taking care of someone else's needs, which you're not doing. It's actually the opposite. I feel like the more you take care of your own needs, the more space you make to be able to take care of other people's needs or help other people. And I think the other important call out that I want to make for sure is like, yes, taking responsibility for your own needs is important. That doesn't mean you can't ask for help to help meet those needs in terms of connecting with people. And actually it's essential. You can't really do it in like a silo. You can't just do it all by yourself. And I think, I say, as someone who was really struggled with my relationship to independence and my independence and trying to find like a healthy level of independence, independence can be to some level a trauma response to not getting your own needs met or not being able to take responsibility or being in situations where you've been impacted. So I think that's really, it's a hard line to draw, right? Like how do you take responsibility without going to the extreme end of like, I'm going to take care of all my needs on my own, because that's not healthy either in most cases. But it's definitely a response that people build to very hard lives and a lot of difficult experiences. In terms of, I think the other thing that you've really talked about, I think you have such an inspirational journey in terms of how you came out of some, bullying, like you mentioned earlier, and just being able to punch in and really build your confidence to the point where you can tell yourself, I am enough. How would you tell other people to do that? How do you coach your clients to build confidence?
Right. So again, Anvi, I would say is by looking at the results. So results, what you're getting in life, are a good, sign to see where you are at. When, for example, let's talk about wealth. If you're not currently satisfied with the amount of wealth right now, there must be something at the back end which is not right. It could be wrong actions that you're taking in terms of making wealth. Your actions are driven by your beliefs. So there must be some beliefs at the back end which are not right, which are limiting beliefs. So I was just doing a workshop with some of my inner members about this only. So we were discussing how your beliefs are creating your reality, outside reality. So now if we have to assess if we are at the right point or not. We need to assess what results are we getting in life.
Right.
So let's say if you're not happy with the relationships that you have, then it's just a sign of something being wrong at the back end. So you take it as a sign. So, for example, I would just give another analogy. Let's say there is a thorn which is pierced through your skin. It could stay there for one day or more, but at some point in time, it just would come on the surface. Doesn't that so happen? It just comes up on the surface.
Yeah.
So just like that, every problem in our life is on the surface. We take it as my life is so messy, my life is a chaos, but it's just that these problems have come on the surface so that you can notice them.
Yeah.
So let's say if you have wealth issues, it needs to be noticed. It is just, maybe the universe is our friend and it wants us to notice what all problems are there in our life.
Yeah.
And why we are noticing a lot of wealth issues is because that is what we need right now. We need to address those issues.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's very.
If we have relationship issues, again, that's what we need to address, I would say.
I think that whole concept of like thoughts create your reality is so important. Especially subconscious thoughts, because that's like something that's harder to be aware of, right? Like we can be aware of our conscious thoughts, but like really looking at subconscious programming, I think is super important. I know we've been having people go in and out, so real quick, I just want to mention, if you guys have any questions that you want to ask Divya, go ahead and pop them in the chat, because we can see them and I can go ahead and ask Divya the questions as well. So it's not, we don't have to stick to my questions in case anyone live with us has questions. So I think going back to thoughts creating your reality, I know I've had a lot of, it's really hard to be disciplined about your thoughts. I think that's really what I've come up with, like stopping negative thoughts and reprogramming and sitting in gratitude. I feel really uncomfortable in gratitude sometimes, which I know sounds so weird, but sometimes it's like, is my life really that good? Like, can things really be that good? Because I think a lot of external factors play on our need for external validation. They play on the need for validation. They play on our brain's focus on negative thoughts, right? Our brain has a tendency to focus on negative thoughts more than positive thoughts. I think it's like for every one negative thought, you need like 5 or 6 or something like ridiculous positive thoughts to overbalance that out or overcome that in a sense. And factors I'm talking about, like social media, those notifications, they play on your a need for, like, it's like a drug. It's a similar mechanism as any other drug. Even people like politicians manipulate like certain like weak points and stuff like that. So I feel like with society playing basically on all of these factors, and they're basically like bringing out that need more, they're like enhancing it. How do you reprogram your thoughts? Like, how do you really sit with yourself on a level and reprogram that subconscious mind when you have so many factors working against it? Especially today, I feel like the further I advance in my life, the more I see this.
Right. Okay. So, Anvi, I would say it's almost been a year that I saw any kind of news or any kind of media channel. I've not read a newspaper in the last 1 year. I have not read any kind of news, only those which are really important. So when COVID happened and there was a lockdown which was about to happen, my friends would call me up and they would say, because we know you won't be reading anything, we just need to update you on this, that you need to buy groceries because you won't be reading news, they know. So again, Anvi, it's your conscious decision. It has to be what you choose to experience in life. For example, if you're only watching negative series or maybe negative talks or hanging out with negative people, negative thoughts are bound to occur. But if you're hanging out with kids maybe, or just watching some good series, or maybe reading positive stuff, then that is what is going to go in your mind, and that's what's going to be reproduced back. So when you say that gratitude, gratitude is really important and impactful. Why? Because when you're grateful, you can't have anxious thoughts. When you're grateful, you can't be angry. So that's why people say that you need to practice gratitude, so that you can shift entirely from that, juggling mind to a very static or
Yes.
peaceful mind. That's the reason. But if you can't happen to practice gratitude, then you could begin with a simpler practice which says, so some people have difficulty in affirming that maybe I'm wealthy, I'm happy, I'm rich. They can't say these affirmations. So you could begin with a simpler one, which is, I am starting to believe that I am happy. I'm starting to move towards being happy. So this would kind of decrease the resistance that's there,
Because you're easing into it. I think for people, sometimes
exactly.
it's identity separation, right? Sometimes those affirmations don't work because on a subconscious level, you feel separated from it. You don't believe it. So then it's like, okay, it's not going to work if you don't believe it. So I think I like that I'm just starting to believe, because it's like you're easing yourself into it. That's really, because I know for me, it's like sometimes I get overwhelmed also, like, changing. Because even if it's a negative belief, it's a comfort zone. And I experience
it's a comfort zone.
Anxiety.
So true. So true.
Like
so
with
true.
me, like I think, like with me, I find it really, and this is going back to what I was talking about with finding it difficult to sit with gratitude or sit with something more static, is because I'm so used to my brain being chaotic. I'm so used to functioning in a chaotic, scatterbrained brain that it's just I find it so uncomfortable.
Because you're seeking a sense of identity from there. You've been identified with it. You get a sense of comfort from there. So who would Anvi be without this anxiety? That's probably the question that your subconscious mind is asking. Give me an identity. So maybe you need to replace it with a positive image of yourself. That is where visualization comes in picture. You visualize it. So you need to visualize yourself. So,
sorry, go ahead.
Please continue, Anvi.
Please. Do you want to talk more about visualization? We're describing visualization.
So I was just discussing. So if you want to give your mind a cue of something else than the usual comfort, then you visualize an ideal future so that it doesn't stay empty, because it doesn't want to stay empty like that.
I love that. I think visualization, at least for me, I've used some visualization in some areas. It's made me more comfortable. I think the more I sit with it, and I just like, because there's a period of discomfort, but like I like to remind people, like, discomfort's temporary. Because once you consistent, and I think this is where you're talking, a lot of the practices that you're talking about, consistency is key. It's like doing it even if it doesn't feel comfortable, because eventually if you do it enough, your reality will change, right? You'll create a new reality. And like suddenly you'll find it comfortable, right? So for example, for me, you said, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like you said, it's a sense of identity. I find a sense of identity with being scatterbrained and chaotic thinking, and it's hard to admit that. It's really hard to sit with that. It's kind of like sitting with your shadow, essentially. It's like
so true.
Because I think anxiety, I'm just going to go back to that example because that's what I'm familiar with. Anxiety is something I have known for 23 years of my life before I actually started working on breaking it down. That's a lot of time that I've used it as, and for me, I think my brain was like, oh, this is how I'm productive. Like, this is how I get you to do work, is by being anxious. So if I start to visualize something like gratitude or love, which are much higher frequencies, and they're so calm, they're like such calm things that it's not chaotic, and there's so much room in my head. It's like, what? There's too much room in my head. It's like, you're not going to get anything done. Like, I think that's been my biggest kind of separation when I try to use affirmations. Like, I am grateful, I am loved. Is I'm like, but I'm not going to get anything done. Like, I'm not going to make my goals happen because I've been using anxiety as like a pressure point. Whereas actually, when I actually sit in flow, I think is a good example. Flow state, right, which is very calm, and you're kind of just like sailing through life in a sense. I actually get more done. Like, when I actually come out of it and I actually were to compare, like, how much did I get done being anxious versus flow state, I actually got done more in flow state. It's just different, and it's very unfamiliar to me, so I have a resistance to going into it. I think initially I freak out, and I think that's so important that like those practices are so important to like do them even when you feel like they're not working. You just keep doing it.
So even for that, you could use an affirmation which would say that I am getting work done while being peace, while being peaceful.
Oh, I like that.
So,
Okay.
so yeah, you could associate these because you have to, in any case, you have to produce evidence for your subconscious mind and me. So
Yeah,
it needs evidence that work is being done while being peaceful and calm. That is
good
when
point.
it will, even in future, when you are peaceful, your work will be done.
Yeah,
That is when your
interesting.
subconscious will allow you to
Yes.
get work done.
I love
Because,
how there's an
right, right.
affirmation for everything. There's always an affirmation. You can just reprogram everything. It's great.
Yes,
I
yes,
think
yes.
the other thing, and this is, I think the last thing I kind of want to make sure we address is
Mm-hmm.
the concept of boundaries. And I know I bring up boundaries a lot because it's something that I've been working on for the past year, like very actively. I think it's become
Right,
so much, the focus and the importance of boundaries has become much more in the light of COVID, because it's just thrown
right,
all of our systems into a heightened state. And I think the more,
right.
when we're in survival mode, I think boundaries become even more important. And I think boundaries are a
So
very
true,
important aspect of building self-validation. So, and I know
so
we've
true.
talked indirectly about, different various types of boundaries, but just to set some
Mm-hmm.
context, right? So it took me a really long time to recognize the concept of boundaries. I think building boundaries is another thing we're not taught through school or through
Right,
other, just like
so true,
emotional
so
intelligence,
true.
we're not taught it. So a lot of us learn
Yeah,
later in life through difficult experiences where we don't have boundaries, like, oh, we need boundaries. Or like for me, in my case, it was my therapist who started teaching me the concept of boundaries.
okay,
And
okay.
still, it's my therapist who really, makes sure, like, are you setting your boundaries? Are you aware of your
Hmm.
boundaries? I think one of the most, and this was just a couple months ago, she's like, you can't just assume. She said something really that stuck with me. She's like, Anvita, you can't just assume that people know your boundaries silently. You have to verbalize them, because a lot of my boundaries, I was
Very
assuming
true.
that, oh, that's just a part of treating people decently. But
Yeah,
the thing is,
yeah,
just
yeah.
because those are my boundaries doesn't mean they're someone else's boundaries.
Hmm.
So it can be
So true.
really, really difficult sometimes to recognize that and like acknowledge that like people's boundaries look different. So
So
how would you say people should go about one, like becoming aware of their boundaries, and how do you think that plays into
hmm.
self-validation?
Right. Okay. Okay. So, Anvi, just like your therapist said, these are not implicit by nature. Your
Yeah.
boundaries are not implicit. You have to explicitly say and express them. You need to be very vocal about what is it.
Yeah.
What is it that you will not accept from others, and what is
Mm-hmm.
it that you want from others? That's
Yeah.
also kind of telling what are your expectations from others.
Right.
So, very very small example. Since COVID has happened, a lot of people have to work from home. So,
Yes. Good
not a
example.
lot of people have boundaries when it comes to interaction with their family members. Since
Yeah.
uh, maybe you're staying at home, you would know better.
I actually
How is
have
it like?
my parents have great boundaries, so I'm actually really fortunate that way.
Okay, okay, okay,
But
okay.
I know of
Right,
friends who had to set those boundaries or haven't even been aware
right,
of what those boundaries are.
right. Right, right, right. So you have to be really expressive in terms of what is it that you will not accept from others. So
Mm,
in a very kind and generous and compassionate manner, you need to tell maybe your family members or whosoever it is that you need to draw boundaries with. You just have to explain why is it that you're wanting to create boundaries, how will it help
yeah.
you, and how
Okay.
will it help them? Because they also need to know what is in it for them,
Ah,
right?
good point.
So what, yeah, yeah. So when you tell them that you will feel more peaceful,
Mm-hmm.
and the entire environment of the house will also be more calm, like that, they will also see that, okay, there's something in it. Whatever
Yeah.
it is, maybe what are you getting out of it and what are they getting out of it? So
Yeah.
in that sense, they will be able to better accept it. So also,
Mm,
it doesn't have to be rude all the time.
yeah.
It doesn't have to be very egoic in that sense, because some people go very, in the attitude that, okay, I've drawn boundaries, now nobody's gonna, claim your power over me. It doesn't always have to be like that. So it
Yeah.
could be in a compassionate manner that you tell people, see, I'm trying to draw boundaries, I'm trying to learn new patterns of living for my own sake.
Yeah.
So that's how it should be done ideally.
Yeah. I think you bring up such an important point that you can set boundaries in a compassionate manner. I think I read a quote, I don't remember
Hmm.
whose Instagram it was shared on, but they said boundaries are the place where I can love me and you. And I think that's so
Yes,
important. They're the line at which you
so
can take
true.
care of yourself and help take care of others and maintain that connection, because I think one of the boundaries are one of the most compassionate things that you can do in any connection is setting boundaries for yourself and helping others set boundaries too. I think for me, I try to be really cognizant of where my friends might have boundaries. For example, like if I talk to a really close friend, and I'm talking about like friends that I've known since childhood, but it's a difficult topic, like I have something heavy to share, I will still ask them, like, are you in the emotional space to hold this? Because I don't know what state they're in. It's not just because they're really close to me. They're not responsible for holding space for me all the time. They have their own emotional needs. So that's one way of like, I think even setting your boundaries, being cognizant of maybe friends who might struggle with that and helping them, or maybe even asking them where there might be a boundary can make them aware of like, oh, I should put a boundary up here.
Yes.
And I think
that's so true.
That's something, like, it's a role modeling thing. And I think the other thing is like, if you don't set boundaries for yourself, I know one thing I've experienced is as I started setting those boundaries for myself, my connections with people have gotten better because I've been better at recognizing, like, because sometimes when my friends used to set boundaries when I had no boundaries, I took their boundaries personally. Like, I was like, oh, you don't want to hang out with me, or like, oh, you don't, like, it was very egoistic the way I looked at their boundaries, when really they were just saying, like, I need to take care of myself. It's not saying that I don't want to be friends with you. But I think the more I became aware of my own boundaries and when I set them, and I noticed that, okay, I do that, but that doesn't mean that, like, I'm not, wanting to connect with that person. I'm like, oh, but the other people are doing that too. It makes you more aware of that concept, and that people are doing it for them. I think a lot of the way people behave is driven by their inner state rather than how they feel about you. So I think boundaries are one way we can role model that. So I really appreciate what you said about, like, recognizing not only how boundaries help you, but what are they doing for the other person? How are they helping the connection? Because that can help bring people in terms of like, I'm doing this. This will help our connection. This is the good thing for both of us. And also encouraging them to set their own boundaries. Definitely a work in progress for me, I won't lie, but I'm working on it. Awesome. Well,
amazing. Because when you heal yourself, other people also reflect that healing to you. Your vibe attracts your tribe. So again, if you're when you're vibrating on a higher frequency. Because
I think and I think that's what self-validation builds. It builds that energy. It builds internal energy. It gives you energy, right? You're working with your energy. And I think like you said, you attract people like you. Like when you build that idea of self-validation, that's your aura. And people, it's like an inner thing that comes. And I think like, I know when I've been very inspired by people who have that inner sense of confidence, where I know it comes from the inside, and the way they talk and the way they know they respect themselves. And that to me is so inspirational, because it reminds me, like, am I respecting myself? Am I taking care of my own needs? It's a good reminder. So in case anyone, shout out to the people who do that, because you guys are like great. And I think, much love to the people who are still building that. I'm very much still on that journey, and I will be for the rest of my life. I'm sure Divya, like, people like you who help people build that, awesome. Like, I love the work that, coaches do.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I think, we're about 10 minutes under the hour. So I think, did you have any kind of final thoughts you wanted to add on this topic? Otherwise, I think we could just close it out. And thank you for a great conversation.
Thanks a lot, Anvi. I would just like to say that, in the end, it's really important. I think there's some sparkle on my face.
Oh, is that a filter?
Yeah, that was. So, okay, I would just like to conclude it with these thoughts that, again, just like you say, it's really important, and it's kind of showing love for yourself and others at the same time, drawing boundaries, self-validation, and not seeking external validation all the time. It's just a reflection of the love that you have for yourself and for others. And it's really important to build on that, because the next version of yourself will only unravel itself when you are there already, when you have healed yourself completely, when you've stopped seeking other people's validation and subscribing to their ideas of everything. That is when you truly realize who you are as a person, what are your needs, what is the purpose of your life, and that is when you will be closer to yourself, ever, more than ever.
Yeah.
You'll be closer to yourself at that point in time, and you'll know yourself better, and you'll be able to cater to your own needs and others also.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was like the perfect summary of everything we talked about. Awesome, Divya. Well, I hope you have a great rest of your night. I know it's late there. So thank you so much for joining us. And it was a privilege talking to you.
Thanks a lot, Anvi, for having me.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye, Anvi. Good night.
Good night.